So I'm going to share with you my story about my son, who would be actually 33 as of last week. I want to give you a little bit of background if I can. So first of all, he was born October 18th, 1988, and he passed away July 16th, 2013. And from his headstone, you can already see that he was a huge basketball player. He was a huge sports kid. And you'll see some of the pictures. And I like to show a little, whoops, can you advance it?
Yes.
I don't know why it's not.
It has a mind of its own.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you a few pictures just to show you that Brandon grew up in a very happy home. He had a huge personality. He was full of life. He was the firstborn. We have two other children, two girls, but he was our firstborn, and he was, okay, you might have to go one more, sorry.
Yeah, you're fine, just keep telling me.
So I just wanted to, like I said, I always give everybody a picture of who he was before he became someone that was pretty much unrecognizable. He was known for his smile. All of his teachers loved him. He was never a kid that ever got into any trouble. He was an A-B student, mostly B. But like I said, he was very athletic. You can go one more. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
He loved baseball. That's kind of his first thing that we started out with. He was very, like I said, very athletic. As he got older, and you can go to the next one too if you want, he had a lot of friends. He was very well liked. In fact, one of the day of his funeral, one of his friends that he was always with said, you know, it was a good day when you got to school and you got to sit next to Brandon Watson, because he was just that kid. He was the kid that everybody liked. And so to look at him, you would never know what his future was going to be. You wouldn't know that he was going to end up being a drug addict. You look at someone like this who's full of life. This is him right here. That's him over there. They were always at our house, having a blast, acting silly, and you can go on to the next one if you want, doing silly things like shrink wrapping. And so that's him just being goofy with his friends, and this is him over here. This was him in 8th grade. So I want you to kind of look at him. Some of the pictures I have are just him in 7th and 8th grade. So I wanted to focus on what he was like when he was your age. He looked like anybody in here, sitting in here, as far as the kind of kid he was. And like I said, he was just full of life. So as he got older, and I think you can, let me see if there's one more before. Yeah, this was 7th grade as well. This is 7th grade and 7th grade. And you can see he looks like a normal kid. Lots of friends. Like I said, this is my other two daughters. But as he got older, when he went to high school, he went to Roncalli, and he was 6'3" by that time. If you'll go to, I think, the last before. No, yes. And you can see this is 8th grade. He's as tall as my husband at that age. He was 6'1" in 8th grade. And when he got to Roncalli, he played basketball for Roncalli. He decided then, or they asked him to play varsity because he was that good. He was a 3-point shooter. So that he played varsity. One day he couldn't get a ride home from us. He wasn't driving yet because he was only a sophomore. And his one of the upperclassmen brought him home. And this upperclassman decided to introduce him to weed. So he smoked with him for the very first time, and he didn't want to say no. He was with someone who was really good at basketball. He looked up to him. He thought, well, if this kid's doing it, I guess it's okay. So he did. Well, the problem was, guys, he liked it. Okay? So he liked it enough that he began to do it daily. And what happened then, a lot of things kind of came into play for him to start thinking about drugs. First of all, his best friend, whom I'm going to talk about, that's where the forgiveness part comes in. His best friend's brother was killed in a car accident, whom he knew very, very well and hung out with a lot. The second thing that happened, this is all his sophomore year, was that his other best friend, whom he'd been friends with since first grade's mother died in a car accident, and he was very, very close to her. And then the last thing that happened that same year was that I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So all of these things came together for him, and he couldn't deal with it. And we didn't know that he wasn't dealing with it. He was the kind of kid who would smile and say, I'm fine, I'm fine. Well, he was covering up. So he was doing drugs in order to numb himself. So about this same time, his very best friend, who I'm gonna call JP, he switched schools because he wasn't doing very well himself. Well, then my son decided he wanted to switch schools. And we debated about it, we talked about it as a family, and he was not happy at Roncalli, so we sent him to another school. And we asked that he would stay in basketball, but guess what? He dropped out. So he dropped out of basketball and began to skip school and was just spiraling down and down and down. So all of that kind of culminated. He switched from smoking weed to going on to what it was next was taking prescription drugs. And because again, he wanted to numb himself, and that's what he did. So he ended up having a really bad car accident where he totaled his truck. He was okay. Nobody else was involved but a tree. So that kind of, at that point, straightened him up for a little bit. He straightened up, had a girlfriend, graduated from high school, and I think you can go to the next one. These are all his friends well, this is actually his 8th grade graduation. So he went on to college, and we were so proud. We thought we had gotten through that little hurdle, except for the fact that when he got to college, he got back involved with drugs, and it was pills. It was prescription drugs again. And so we had to move him back home. He flunked out of college, moved him back home. He lived with us for a while, and things were just, he jumped from job to job. He just didn't know where he was going. And he started stealing from us. Stealing everything that he could. Jewelry, money. The last straw, and I know this is gonna sound funny, but the last straw for us was when he stole my daughter's guitar that she had gotten from Santa Claus and sold it. It was a nice one, and she was taking lessons, and that was the last straw. We decided, my husband and I decided, we had to kick him out. He could not live in our home she was witnessing this, and she was only in 5th grade. It was not fair to her that she had to live with someone like this. My other kid, he didn't. He had a great childhood. So we kicked him out. We didn't know where he was gonna go. We just said, you're over 18, buddy, you gotta make it. You gotta do it yourself. You can't live here anymore and not follow our rules. So we kicked him out. The only thing he had was a book bag. You know, it allowed us to open our eyes to the blessings that we still had, instead of living in that feeling of anger and revenge. Now, I'm not the kind, because we're parents, I guess, and we're older, I never thought to get revenge. I guess we could have called the police and at any time turned him in, but what was that going to do? It really wouldn't have done anything. Yeah, he would have probably been in jail for a little bit, but he had to work through it himself. He had to want to change. And so it did help us through that part. And Brandon did redeem himself. He was an organ donor. So he donated his organs to 7 recipients. And we are now in touch with one of them. And it's been a beautiful thing. That's another blessing that we've had, that we are able to enjoy and to appreciate because of the forgiveness that we gave. So, last one, this one we just, forever in our hearts, he is. It's been 8 years and it doesn't get easier at all, as you can see. It's very emotional, but I feel like we are still in the healing process and it's all going to be okay. So that's our forgiveness story. So there you go.
What questions do you guys have for Mrs. Watson?
You can ask anything. You can. Yes.
What did you learn from those?
What did I what?
What did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned, oh gosh, I learned so many things. I learned that in order for me to move on, I needed to forgive. In order for me to heal, I learned that forgiving is definitely was more for me than for JP, although I think that the gift we gave JP was a lot. So he was able to get his life back together. Great question, though, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir.
What choices did you
Choices, we could have, okay, my choices were, I suppose I could have held on to the anger. Like I said, it wasn't about revenge for me, but it was the anger that I was holding on to. And that anger was holding me back from moving forward, from healing, and being able to see all the graces and the blessings that I still had in front of me. So, anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. And I'll tell you what, the hardest thing as a parent is to watch your child walk out of that door and not know where they're going. It's the hardest, one of the hardest things that we have ever gone through. And so he went, finally he did land at my sister-in-law's house, and that's where he ended up living. But he continued to use drugs. And so the drugs then, what happened then is the prescription drugs weren't enough. That wasn't giving him the high, because that's what happens when you do drugs. You get used to it. So you're always looking for something to make you high again. And so he then decided to go to heroin. And I don't know if anybody in here is very familiar with heroin, but you do it once, you're hooked, although he was a drug addict before then. But I tell you what, guys, he hated his life. He hated being a drug addict. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to be a drug addict when I grow up. Nobody says that. And trust me, you don't want to be. He hated it. And he often said, I don't want to be this way. So he, at one point then, owed money to a drug dealer. And so he was desperate to get this money, so he decided to rob a CVS. And he got $58, that's it. And they caught him before he ever got home. He wasn't real smart about it. He did not have a gun, by the way. I do want to say that. He had a pretend gun. It was not a real gun. So they got him at my sister-in-law's house, and my sister-in-law called us. I could hear the whole thing going down. And again, as a parent, it's one of the hardest things to go through, okay? When you know your kid was like this, okay? I didn't recognize this kid. So he went to prison, or he went to jail. It wasn't really prison, because this was his first major offense. So he was there for 3 months, where he became clean, meaning he wasn't doing drugs for those 3 months. And he realized what it was that it was like to be clean again. He realized what he was like when he was clean. And all the while, his best friend was out there still using, even though he has seen what's going on. He was out there still using. And JP was making bad choices all along and really didn't help Brandon through any of this. But Brandon, then I want to read just a short, do I have time? I know I've got just a few minutes, but I want to read you a letter and I'm only reading just a few pieces of it, that Brandon wrote from jail to us. He says, it's been over 3 months now, and I have had a lot of time to think. One thing I know is that I have a great family who loves me dearly. You guys have been there for me this whole road. I do miss you guys a lot, and I want to get out and do good. I'm so tired of the lifestyle I was living. You guys don't deserve that, and I don't either. Now that I have been sober for so long, I am realizing what means the most to me, and a lot of it I have taken for granted. The most that I have taken for granted is the love that I get from you guys. I have been clean for over 3 months, and I have to say, it feels great. And I want to get out and stay clean. Says, but I guess I'll wrap this up. I do want to say, first, I'm sorry for everything I have put you through. Second, thank you. Thanks for being there for me, even though I haven't been the best son. But I will redeem myself. I love you always, and thank you. He did redeem himself, by the way. He was I will explain that in a minute. So he gets out, and he's doing great. And we see the Brandon that we remember, this guy. And I think there might be one more, I don't know. I can't remember. This guy, right here. This is Brandon. The smile that all his teachers remember and loved. And so he's doing really well. And this is 3 weeks after he gets out of prison or jail. His best friend, JP, comes over and brings heroin. Now, mind you, Brandon hasn't been doing it for 3 months. What happens is if you haven't been doing it, your body then gets used to not having the drug. And so what Brandon did and didn't realize is that he injected as much heroin in that he would have before. So it killed him. He was brain dead, and we had to make the decision to take him off of life support. But here's the thing. We didn't realize that his best friend was the one who brought it over. We didn't realize that. He came to our house well, first of all, I have to say, he came to the funeral high. It was the most disrespectful and sad thing that we saw. We had just dealt with putting our son of losing our son. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
And he comes to the funeral high. But I didn't realize at that time that he had so much guilt that he couldn't deal with what he had done. So he came to our house several months later and admitted that he was the one. And we had to sit there and look at him. And at the time, I couldn't say anything. I couldn't forgive him. I couldn't do anything yet. So he went on. He just left. We didn't say, well, that's okay, or we forgive you, because we had to process what had just happened and what we had just dealt with. So he went downhill. This JP, his best friend, decided then he was breaking and entering into homes to steal, to get drugs. And so he ended up in prison for about a year. And he came back to us, well, afterward, because we know the family. And we still hear from him. But my husband and I decided it was time to let it go and to forgive him. And so we wrote a letter to him. We wrote a letter and told him that we forgave him and that we understood how it was killing him, and that we just wanted him to let it go and to know that we really cared about him, because we've known him since he was in 4th grade, and we wanted to let him know that it's okay, go on, but do something with your life. So he did. He went into a drug rehab program, and he was in it for 6 months. He got out. He stumbled a little bit here and there. He got a job, and he's going to school right now to be a drug counselor. He's clean. And I think that had we not forgiven him, I'm not sure where he would be because of the guilt that he was living with. You guys, you have to realize this was his very best friend. And I know that Brandon had something to do with it. Brandon wasn't, he was still culpable. He was still to blame too. He was the one who chose to take the drug. He didn't have to, but he did. So it wasn't all JP's fault. So the thing about what forgiveness did for us then, as we worked through this, and we still do, obviously you can see it's still very emotional, we worked through this, it helped us heal. It helped us to move on and to start looking at some of the beauty of what has come from all of the people that have been around to help us. We've looked for all the graces that are around us with regards to Brandon.